All right, so system design. So we just talked through, we went through the group and trying to ask people what they wanted to do, and system design is something that is generally expected from folks who have a little bit of experience, usually anywhere between 5+ years of experience. Sometimes it starts as early as 3. But if you are a junior engineer who's just starting out your career, there is generally no expectation that you understand what system design is. You are expected to be aware of the concepts of what system design is, because senior engineers will be doing the design, and you should be aware of what the different components are, and then essentially be able to meaningfully challenge them, and then essentially build something meaningful out of that. So usually at someone who's just fresh out of college or not, they would not be expected. But what I've seen is many companies do ask system design questions, because just to kind of test your ability to understand different components, how do you decompose them, are you aware of design patterns and things like that. So with that in mind, what are the kinds of system design questions that folks have actually recently seen, either in interview setting or in interview preparation setting? Anyone who's actually been working on, go ahead.
Like designing an API for a feed.
Design an API for a feed. A pretty classic interview question, because essentially it works through the same patterns. It works through the same set of questioning patterns. Most common design questions usually don't go down to the API. What they will actually ask for is the meta problem you're trying to solve. So rather than actually say that design an API for how do you manage like a friends graph in Facebook, instead of actually asking that question, they would just ask the Uber question, which is how do you actually manage a friends graph, and that's it. The expectation is that you need to go and say, I'll build an API, and then they'll say, tell me what the API looks like. But in some cases, they directly ask you the API. And there are a bunch of things that actually come with it. But fantastic. Any other type of questions that people are seeing?
Define a Netflix, do a Netflix kind of system that does like video delivery.
So build a full-fledged system like Netflix. And there are a bunch of problem statements there. One is essentially the catalog management, which is how do you manage a catalog, how do you deal with it. Then comes the recommendation, how do you actually connect the items in the catalog to the customer. And then comes the delivery itself, how do you stream it, where do you stream it from, you want to stream from the closest location, you want to be aware of the network conditions that the customer is in, and give them different pieces, and things like those. So there are multiple angles and facets. There is no practical way for you to figure out what the interviewer wants till the interviewer actually tells you. So you'll probably have to fish in the dark a little bit, try to figure out hey, here's the big picture, and then you want to just narrow down. So generally, system design questions are at a meta level, they are problem solving questions. You are trying to explain what the problem looks like, and then you're trying to build up to narrower zones of the problem. So try not to be super specific in your answer right off the bat. I mean, if you actually start saying that I'm going to use this specific algorithm to go figure out what is the best way to match customers to this, or I'm going to use machine learning or big data, whatever else that is, and then you're trying to zone in on the particular problem, and what the interviewer really wanted was actually catalog management, then you're nowhere near the picture, so that doesn't work. So, but fantastic questions, a pretty common one. And any common problem, from an interviewer perspective, any common problem that you've actually faced is an interview question, is a system design question. For example, elevators. I'm pushing a few buttons on the elevator, and I'm like, damn, the elevator doesn't come on time. Now, fantastic design question. Now tell me how to make the elevator, how to optimize an elevator delivery system, or a way of getting elevators. Or the other one is parking lot. Yeah, parking lot is unfortunately, parking lot is so overused that I don't want to actually ask to use that question. But there's so many variants of it that makes it super interesting.
So I was once asked a specific question, something like design a telemetry system that would be common enough for all teams at Microsoft, Google or something. So that's also one type of question.
So design a telemetry system, which is essentially telemetry systems are systems where you're generating large amounts of data, and you're just capturing the data and storing them. In general, the purpose for the telemetry system is optimized for capturing large amounts of data and storing in an organized way. It is not generally good for retrieval. It's not generally useful for intelligence on top of it. That is a different system. There is a different system. This is the producer side of the problem. So if you look at AWS or Azure or any other cloud systems, you would actually find that they are dealing with like hundreds of thousands of computers at any point of time. I mean, these are all CPUs, and you're trying to capture data like the load averages, or in terms of like, the CPU utilization, memory, disk space utilization. So these are all like, raw data that actually comes in. And then this data is streamed somewhere. So they need to know computer 1 has a CPU utilization at a 5-minute granularity of this. And then on top of that, you have another system which actually aggregates this data and then figures out like what is the average across like a larger time duration. Like, on an average, like how many of your computers actually tripped the 80% CPU utilization threshold or things like that. So you have like, this is like the defining what the metrics are, capturing the data, and then finding a system that actually monitors these metrics and alarms at various thresholds, forms the full system. And at an interviewer perspective, they could just ask one or the full system, right? So that's kind of where we're looking at. Any other set of questions?
Design tiny URL systems.
Design tiny URL systems. If I actually go to Google and search for top 10 design questions or system design questions, tiny URL actually is pretty much in the number 1 of the list. And tiny URL was, I don't know when Bitly actually started, but it was like it was a big deal at some point. And suddenly everybody started building their own. Like Google has its own, and then I think looks like Google has sunset its tiny URL system now. But everybody has their own. And the other thing, of course, is with like Twitter and Facebook and others, which are like message-based systems. What they've done is they've started to shrink the URLs. Like you have a gigantic long URL that you actually need to post in a Twitter. That doesn't make sense, because Twitter is only 280 characters now. So they would shrink the URL into something like tw. Something IT or something like that / hash code, and that generally works very well for them. So that's a very useful system. So it's a very common system design question. So what else? What else? I'm just trying to crowdsource more ideas. And then,
one time I had to, for a paper interview thing, it was like design a networked rock, paper, scissors kind of game, where you had to send the all the different things you could do over a network and get them to sync up and stuff.
Mm-hmm. So design, so this one's actually interesting. So it's not necessarily a system design question per se, but it actually follows all the same things. So in general, in a system design, you're looking at scale is one of the primary factors for most companies, most items, most games. For a rock, paper, scissors, it starts with more around, here's where it's a near real-time system. So now the fun part of it is that when you actually merge a near real-time system with scale, it comes up with interesting use cases. So let's say instead of rock, paper, scissors is one angle, but if where there is, it's usually like I'm voting for my rock, paper, or scissors, and you're voting for yours. As long as we don't have to vote at the same time. As long as my vote is hidden from you and your vote is hidden from me till we actually merge, it's okay. But what about systems where you need to actually compete against each other for something? Like at some point of time, I believe when we had domain names, which were being they started a new domain name, that new domain name, top level domain or something else, and they wanted people to actually come and buy. And when you go buy for these things, but the challenge that happens is that you've got like 1 million people coming and hitting the website at the same time, and you need to be scaled for that, and that makes it harder. So what they did instead was they actually brought in like a reservation kind of a system where you could reserve a spot, and then what they would do is that they would actually make you compete at that point of time. You can go buy, and then from the time, so I give you a slot between 10 and 10:10, and you have to come in and buy. So however much time you have taken between 10 and 10:10 is your time. And then you will compete against, like, she gets 11 o'clock spot, and whatever time she took between 11 and 11:10 is her time. Between the two of you, whoever is faster gets the domain, or something like that. So they actually did this is like a digital archery, apparently, of where they make you compete, and the whole idea is to actually make you like spread out the load. A large part of most common sale and things like that is where you have people hitting, like if you have like Amazon Prime Day sales, this Black Friday, Thanksgiving sales, or Christmas shopping, right? All of those places at midnight something goes on sale, and you have like a limited products, like 10,000 products that are available, and that's it, and you've got like 1 million people trying to buy that. So what's going to happen is about a couple of seconds before, you're going to have people refresh multiple times, and that causes issues. So there are like few strategies you can use to spread that load around, like digital archery and whatnot. So we'll get back to the main thing. So but